In the gleaming boardroom of a towering Manhattan skyscraper, where billion-dollar empires were forged and shattered in whispers, Aisha Williams stood poised at the precipice of her greatest triumph. As the Black CEO of Apex Innovations, a tech firm she'd built from a garage startup into a global powerhouse, she was moments away from sealing a $4 billion merger that would redefine the industry. Across the table sat Elena Hargrove, the white heiress to the Hargrove fortune, her family's legacy steeped in old money from steel mills and real estate that spanned generations. Elena's smile was sharp, her eyes appraising Aisha not as an equal, but as an anomaly in a world she believed was hers by birthright. The air hummed with anticipation as the final documents were laid out, the culmination of months of negotiations. But beneath the polished veneer, a storm brewed. Elena, known in elite circles for her unfiltered views on merit and heritage, had let slip subtle barbs during preliminary talks, comments that skirted the edge of decorum, hinting at doubts about Aisha's fit in such rarefied spaces. Aisha had brushed them off, focusing on the prize. This deal would not only catapult her company but also prove wrong every doubter who'd questioned a black woman's place at the top. Yet, as the celebratory cake was wheeled in, a towering confection symbolizing the sweet success of their union, Elena's facade cracked. With a flick of her wrist, she scooped a handful of the rich chocolate frosting and smeared it across Aisha's face, the act deliberate and degrading. The room froze. Frosting dripped down Aisha's tailored suit, mingling with the sting of humiliation that burned deeper than any physical mess. Elena's laughter echoed, laced with a venom that revealed the ugly underbelly of privilege unchecked. "Oops," she might have said if words were needed, but her expression screamed it. This was no accident, but a calculated reminder of who truly belonged. In that suspended moment, Aisha's world tilted. The cake wasn't just dessert. It was a weapon, wielded with the precision of inherited arrogance. But as the seconds ticked by, something ignited within her. A resolve forged in the fires of countless microaggressions and overt barriers. Minutes later, the deal that promised billions would unravel in a way no one saw coming, exposing the raw nerve of racial injustice in corporate America. What followed wasn't just revenge. It was a reckoning that would echo through boardrooms everywhere. Aisha Williams had always been a force of nature. Rising from the modest streets of Detroit where her parents, both educators, instilled in her the unyielding belief that excellence could shatter ceilings. By her mid-30s, she'd transformed Apex Innovations into a beacon of cutting-edge AI solutions, serving Fortune 500 clients and employing thousands. Her journey wasn't linear. It was punctuated by the subtle and not-so-subtle hurdles of being a black woman in tech, investors who praised her ideas but hesitated on funding, colleagues who attributed her success to diversity quotas rather than her MIT degree and relentless work ethic. Yet, Aisha persisted, turning skepticism into fuel. The merger with Hargrove Enterprises represented the pinnacle. Hargrove, a sprawling conglomerate with roots in industrial America, sought Apex's AI to modernize their operations. The $4 billion deal would infuse Apex with capital for expansion while giving Hargrove a tech edge in a digital age. Negotiations had been grueling, spanning 6 months of late-night calls and cross-country flights. Aisha's team had pored over every clause, ensuring the partnership aligned with her vision of ethical innovation. Elena Hargrove, at 28, inherited her role as the face of the family business after her father's passing. Born into opulence with summers in the Hamptons and winters in Aspen, Elena embodied entitlement. Her social media feeds showcased yacht parties and charity galas, but whispers in industry circles painted a different picture. A woman who viewed diversity initiatives as handouts, and once publicly questioned why certain groups needed extra support. Aisha had encountered such attitudes before, but Elena's were veiled in politeness during early meetings, compliments on Aisha's articulate, presentations that carried an undercurrent of surprise. The final signing was set in Hargrove's opulent headquarters, a marble-clad fortress overlooking Central Park. Aisha arrived early, her power suit impeccably tailored, her mind sharp with strategy. The boardroom buzzed with aides and lawyers, the atmosphere charged with the scent of fresh coffee and impending victory. A custom cake, ordered by Elena's team, sat as a centerpiece, layers of vanilla and chocolate, emblazoned with both company logos in edible gold. It was meant to symbolize unity, a sweet token for the press photos that would follow. As the group settled, Aisha felt the familiar prickle of being the only black face in the room. Elena entered last, her designer dress flowing like liquid silk, her blonde hair perfectly coiffed. She greeted everyone with air kisses, but her eyes lingered on Aisha with a curiosity that bordered on dissection. Small talk flowed, market trends, weather. But Aisha sensed the shift when Elena steered the conversation to backgrounds. She reminisced about her family's pioneering spirit, implying a lineage of self-made success that ignored the systemic advantages. Aisha smiled through it, her curiosity building. Was this genuine naivety or prelude to something more insidious? The documents were reviewed, signatures poised. The deal hung in the balance, a bridge between old wealth and new innovation. But as the cake was cut and plates distributed, Elena's demeanor changed. Her movements grew deliberate, her gaze locking onto Aisha with an intensity that raised the hairs on her neck. The room's energy thickened, curiosity morphing into unease. What lay beneath Elena's polished exterior? Aisha couldn't shake the feeling that this merger wasn't just business. It was a test of her very presence in this world. Tension coiled tighter as the ceremony progressed, the boardroom's fluorescent lights casting harsh shadows that mirrored the unspoken divides. Aisha held her pen steady, her signature about to bind the fates of two empires. But Elena paused, fork in hand, eyeing the cake slice on Aisha's plate. The heiress's lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. A predator sizing up prey. Around them, executives shifted uncomfortably, sensing the undercurrent but unwilling to intervene in the dynamics of power. Elena's comments began innocuously, praising the cake's design before veering into personal territory. She mused aloud about how unexpected it was to see someone like Aisha at the helm, her words dripping with feigned admiration that masked condescension. Aisha felt the familiar weight of being othered, her achievements reduced to her race rather than her acumen. The room grew quieter, the injustice simmering as Elena elaborated on her family's traditional values, implying that Apex's success was a novelty in an industry built by people like us. The racial subtext was palpable, a thread of prejudice woven into every syllable, building emotional stakes that pressed on Aisha's chest like a vice. As the signing loomed, Elena's facade splintered further. She reached for the cake, not with a utensil, but with bare hands, scooping a generous portion. The act was theatrical, drawing eyes as frosting clung to her manicured fingers. Aisha's instincts screamed warning, but protocol held her in place. In a flash, Elena lunged forward, smearing the cake across Aisha's face and blouse. The cold, sticky mass slid down her skin, a visceral assault that transcended physicality. Gasps rippled through the room, but no one moved. Complicity in silence. Elena stepped back, wiping her hands on a napkin, her expression a mix of triumph and mockery. The humiliation burned, a public degradation that echoed centuries of racial subjugation, where black bodies were treated as objects for amusement or control. Aisha's mind raced, flashbacks crashing in waves, the scholarship interviews where she was questioned on her urban background, the board meetings where her ideas were dismissed until echoed by white colleagues. This wasn't just cake, it was a symbol of entitlement, a reminder that no matter her billions, some saw her as lesser. The injustice escalated, her team's horrified stares fueling the fire. Elena's laughter bubbled up, low and satisfied as if the act had released a pent-up resentment. The emotional stakes soared, Aisha's dignity stripped in front of witnesses, her company's future tainted by this spectacle. Yet, amid the chaos, clarity emerged. Aisha wiped her face slowly, her hands steady despite the tremor of rage. The rising tension peaked as she assessed the room, lawyers averting eyes, executives murmuring excuses. This merger, once a dream, now reeked of compromise with bigotry. The stakes weren't just financial. They were personal, a battle against the systemic racism that lurked in corporate corridors. As minutes ticked by, Aisha's resolve hardened, the injustice transforming from wound to weapon. The air thickened with anticipation, the balance tipping toward an inevitable confrontation. The boardroom plunged into a stunned hush, the smeared cake on Aisha's face a grotesque mask that amplified the raw intensity of the moment. Time seemed to stretch, each drip of frosting marking the escalation of a drama that had been building beneath the surface of civility. Elena stood there, her posture regal, as if the act were a mere jest among equals, but her eyes betrayed the deeper malice, a flicker of satisfaction at having asserted dominance. The humiliation hung heavy, a palpable force that squeezed the air from the room, forcing everyone to confront the ugliness of unchecked privilege. Aisha's heart pounded, a drumbeat of fury and clarity. She could feel the weight of history on her shoulders, the ghosts of ancestors who endured far worse degradations, the modern echoes and headlines of racial profiling and corporate exclusion. This wasn't an isolated prank. It was a culmination of the subtle erosions she'd faced, amplified to a deafening roar. Her mind flashed to the countless times she'd swallowed pride for the sake of progress, but here, in this pinnacle of her career, the line was crossed irrevocably. The emotional peak surged as tears threatened, not of weakness but of righteous anger that fueled her next move. With deliberate calm, Aisha rose from her seat, ignoring the sticky residue that clung to her. The room's eyes locked on her, a collective breath held in suspense. Elena's smirk faltered slightly, sensing the shift, but arrogance kept her rooted. Aisha's voice, though the prompt forbids direct quotes, carried a tone of unyielding authority as she addressed the gathering, her words slicing through the tension like a blade. She highlighted the act not as accident, but as emblematic of the racism that poisoned partnerships, her presence demanding accountability. The climax intensified as Aisha turned to the documents, her hand hovering over the unsigned pages. Elena's confidence cracked, her attempts to downplay the incident falling flat in the face of Aisha's composure. The dramatic core unfolded. Aisha declared the deal untenable, her decision a thunderclap that reverberated through the space. Minutes had passed since the humiliation, mere heartbeats in the grand scheme, but in that brief span, the power dynamic inverted. Elena's face drained of color, the realization dawning that her impulsive act had jeopardized her family's legacy. Chaos erupted in controlled waves. Lawyers scrambled, phones buzzed with urgent calls, and executives exchanged panicked glances. Aisha stood tall, the cake now a badge of her resilience, as she outlined the consequences. The merger's collapse would cost Hargrove dearly in market value and reputation. The intensity peaked with Elena's desperate backpedaling, her privilege exposed as fragile. Aisha's inner turmoil reached its zenith. Doubt mingled with triumph, the emotional stakes of risking her company's future for principle. But the injustice demanded it. To proceed would validate the degradation. As the room dissolved into frantic activity, Aisha's gaze met Elena's, a silent exchange that encapsulated the clash of worlds. The climax crested with Aisha walking out, her steps measured, leaving behind a shattered illusion of equality. The dramatic release was cathartic, the tension that had built over months exploding in this singular, irreversible act. What began as humiliation transformed into empowerment, the most intense moment etching itself into the annals of corporate lore. In the aftermath, the boardroom emptied like a deflating balloon, the $4 billion deal dissolving into legal withdrawals and press statements. Aisha returned to Apex's headquarters, the cake's remnants washed away but the memory seared into her resolve. News of the incident leaked swiftly, amplified by social media and industry insiders, painting Elena's act as a stark example of racial entitlement in high places. Hargrove Enterprises' stock dipped sharply, investors fleeing amid the scandal, while Apex's value surged on waves of public support for Aisha's stand. Elena's world unraveled further, board members distanced themselves. Partnerships faltered, and her family's name, once synonymous with untouchable wealth, became a cautionary tale. Aisha, meanwhile, pivoted Apex toward alliances with firms aligned in values, fostering diversity initiatives that drew top talent. The swift reversal not only preserved her dignity but amplified her influence, inspiring a wave of conversations on racism in business. This story, inspired by real accounts of corporate prejudice, underscores how moments of injustice can spark profound change. In a world where privilege often silences the marginalized, Aisha's actions remind us that true power lies in integrity. What if standing against humiliation could reshape empires? Reflect on that and let it fuel your own pursuit of justice.